Okay.
So, I think we're both on air. This is show
Yeah.
business.
We're rolling.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to show business. This is I'm Dan.
And I'm Showbiz Erik.
Sideshow.
I mean, yeah. Showbiz Pizza Erik.
Yeah.
That's my name.
Ooh, yeah. And I'm Chucky Dan. Or
Oh, yeah,
Danny
nice.
Danny Cheese. Wouldn't that be a
Danny
great
Cheese.
name for like
I like it.
show business?
Show business. Yeah.
Did you hear that Chuck E. Cheese was actually in the news not that long ago? 3 or 4 years ago. I don't know why I pay attention to any of this, but well, I do because it's easy to pay attention to nonsense. You know what I mean?
Right. Oh, yeah.
Especially like right now. But 3 or 4 years ago, they were accused of like taking their leftover, like the pizza that.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, the pizza that customers left on the table and then like blending them in with like other pizzas
Yeah.
and then serving it
Yeah.
to customers.
I have heard
They were
that.
actually making like supposedly making pizzas out of like pizza that had already been that remained uneaten on other like customers' plates.
Yeah.
That's totally bizarre.
Yeah.
I do remember like growing up when I went to Showbiz Pizza as a kid. I do remember their pizza being pretty underwhelming.
Yeah. Yeah, it's funny because if you go to the Amana colonies, I think that's the whole deal. I think that's what family style means. Like whatever's left over, they serve to someone else.
Oh, really?
No, I'm totally
Okay,
making
okay,
that up.
I was-
It's so gross.
Yeah, okay.
But no, for some reason I always thought that, like about the Amana colonies. Like if you didn't eat all your corn, like they just put it back in the big corn bin or something. I don't know.
That sounds like a Simpsons episode thing or something, you know?
Yeah,
that's-
all the corn you can't eat. Yeah.
But I do got to say, man, the few times that I've been to the Amana colonies with my parents, their food was pretty good. Like,
Yeah.
it was
Yeah.
like all that down home stuff, stick to your ribs, you know,
For
call
sure.
an ambulance in about a half hour, you
Yeah.
know, ham, butter. I don't even think
That's about it.
they
Yeah.
didn't even give
Ham
you,
and butter.
yeah, they didn't even give you like, you know, they gave you bowls of butter. Like,
Yeah.
in fact, I'm pretty sure that all of the food was just butter. It was just like, literally sculpted out of butter.
Right. Yeah. Yep. Just like the cow at the state fair. It's a butter sculpture.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Good green beans. Nope. That's butter.
That's butter. That's all that is. You thought you were getting health food, but that's not what we do here.
Even the green beans are literally just floating in butter, melted butter, though. So,
Right.
Yeah.
Dude, we got to do a side podcast about food, man. Like,
It does take up a lot of our conversation.
well, every time we talk about food, it fascinates me. There's this thing right now that they're showing on the History Channel right now for the few people like that still actually have cable, like
Yeah.
my dad, called like the food that built America.
Oh.
So it's like the history of like all of the foods that basically, you know, like fast food and all the stuff that's going to kill you, you know, like,
Nice.
like they talk about, you know, Reese's and Hershey's and like the history of all these candy bars and everything. And I found out that the guy who invented popsicles, he came up with that idea because he accidentally, and they don't explain how accidentally, he accidentally froze a wooden stick in his soda.
Huh.
It's like I would be curious to know what the backstory of that is. Like, how?
Maybe just like sticking wooden sticks and things. you
Yeah.
know, like
I mean,
maybe that was his hobby. maybe he had like an outdoor shed. You know that it was his sticking shed, and he
Sticking
stuck
shed.
wooden sticks and stuff.
Yeah.
But then it was cold out, and he forgot to clean up his hobby, sticking, and Yeah, it froze. I wonder what the first one was. My guess is grape, but
The first soda?
Who knows? The first popsicle.
I actually think the first soda, I mean, I think I actually read this, but I think the first soda might have been like root beer.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Or maybe it was like just like a cola, like a standard cola or something.
Yeah. Or a sarsaparilla or birch beer.
Yeah, something like that. Man, sarsaparilla, I mean,
Yeah.
I don't drink soda very often anymore, but I do like a good sarsaparilla once in a while.
Yeah. Do you like birch beer?
I have vague memories of trying birch beer. What's it like?
Do you like Lifesavers Wintergreen or candy cigarettes? It's kind of the same flavor.
Those are things that well, wintergreen Lifesavers, sure, yeah. I mean,
Okay,
I haven't had it in
that
a long
as
time.
a soda. That's
really?
birch beer. Yeah, and I love it. I mean, it sounds gross, but it's awesome.
Candy cigarettes though don't really taste like wintergreen Lifesavers though. To me,
They have a similar taste. I don't know. I was pretty addicted to them for a while. So
well, yeah, I think every kid was. I love the fact that in America,
I was up to like 2 packs a day for a while.
I love the fact. I love the fact that in America they were actually like marketing like candy cancer stick, like these horrible things that you're supposedly not supposed to do, yet they market it everywhere. To kids. It's like, that was really like, because I know when I was a kid, like, I thought, oh, hey, someday I'm going to smoke a real cigarette.
Oh, yeah.
And I think every kid thought that. And I find it fascinating. Do you remember when they had the bubble gum ones?
Yeah, and you could blow on them.
Yeah, and
the
smoke.
powder would come out.
Yeah, it looked like you were actually smoking a cigarette. Yeah.
Yeah, pretty cool.
Yeah,
that's how I felt about like toy machine guns. Was like, someday I'm gonna have a real machine gun.
Dude, the Super Soaker was so great though.
That's true. Yeah.
Like I remember like me and my neighborhood friends that on Newell Avenue in Muscatine, Iowa, man, we used to just chase each other all day long with like Super Soakers on like a hot summer day. We also all thought that we were like invincible ninjas or something.
Well, you probably were.
Well, maybe, but I don't know. It was kind of that was sort of voided when I jumped from my porch and almost broke my arm doing that. Ninjas don't break arms. They don't break their arms. No. I mean, they break other people's arms, but
yeah, almost all the time, probably.
Almost all the time.
Yeah, just breaking arms.
Yeah,
another long day of breaking arms.
I think maybe like ninjas have evolved since the days of like swords and nunchucks and sais and bows and green skin and turtle shells. And, senseis that are rats.
Yeah.
Which also, just as a little side note, I've actually been reading Ninja Turtles comics all week. So
the original or like newer ones or what?
No, I have all of the old the old collection of the first volume, and then there was a second volume, third volume, fourth volume, and now they're on the fifth volume. So I have the whole first volume. Most of it is just in trade paperbacks because, I'm not going to pay, I don't know, thousands of dollars for like the early issues. You know what I mean?
So these are like the black and white ones?
Yes. There were
right.
There were 62 issues of the original black and white series. And then Mirage published a second volume, which was only 13 issues, and that one was actually full color. And then Image Comics published another volume in like 96, which was a weird time for the Ninja Turtles franchise because everybody that was my age, which we were the demographic that the Ninja Turtles, we were the exact demographic that the Ninja Turtles cartoon was appealing to. we were all 16 and we started getting into punk. Well, I shouldn't say me, but I'm probably like a lot of other people my age. You know, in 96, I was 16 and I didn't give a shit about the Ninja Turtles for a while. You know, wasn't until adulthood that I started to really delve into the comics because, you know,
Gotcha.
in the 80s, I was a kid, you know, so
Yeah.
I didn't read the original comics, you know.
Yeah.
I was introduced to the Turtles because of the cartoon. I didn't realize how violent an adult situation like the original comics were. But like Volume 3, the Image, that one, kind of like that series I talked about last week, the Sonic Disruptors from DC. That one, it got canceled after like 23 issues, and it was supposed to be a 26 issue series. So it, like the Sonic Disruptors, it got canceled on a cliffhanger because Image just wasn't selling, because the Turtles weren't really a hot commodity in like 96 to like 98 or whatever. But IDW, who is the current company that is publishing the current Turtles series, they reissued that Image series under the name Ninja Turtles Urban Legends, and they completed the entire series that was supposed to be completed, but the Image series went back to black and white, just like the first volume.
Oh, okay, gotcha.
But IDW reprinted it in color. So I have the first volume mostly in trade paperbacks. I have a few of the actual issues, but mostly it's in trade paperbacks. I have the second volume in trade paperback. I actually, at one time, I had all 13 issues of the second volume, but, you know, I sold it because I needed money at the time for, I now regret it because at the time, it wasn't really worth that much, and now it is. Or at least it's a sought-after collector's item. And then I have all of the issues of the Urban Legends, and then I have 26 issues of the fourth volume. And that's what I read today. That's what I've been reading pretty much all week is the fourth volume, which is also a black and white series. And that one was just called TMNT. But there were 32 issues of that, and I have 26. But 27 through 32 of that series, for some reason, they're very rare and also very valuable. Like I went to eBay and like number 27, somebody was selling for $150. And I'm like,
Nice.
wow. Like, so there's no way I'm going to buy 27 through 32.
Right.
So I'm actually reading those issues online right now because I like to get the full story. And then I'm going to start the IDW series, which is like the fifth volume or like the revamp that came out in like 2000 and I don't know. I think it was like 2011 was the first issue. I'm a huge Turtles fan, Eric. Like I could
cool.
talk about Ninja Turtles. Like, you know, some people, you know, it's like with some people it's the X-Men, it's Spider-Man or whatever. For me, it was the Ninja Turtles. They were always like my
cool.
absolute favorite. Like, and also the cartoons too. Have you ever watched any of the 2003 revamped series?
No.
The 2003 cartoon is really good because it's actually based mostly on the black and white comics. Although it's not as violent because it was still, you know, it was still supposed to be for kids. But anyway, so yeah. Ninja Turtles, this is now a podcast about the Ninja Turtles apparently.
Yeah. And I don't know hardly anything about the Ninja Turtles. I first heard of them it was probably 1989. Maybe earlier. I don't know. 88. Yeah. Excuse me. But the reason is because of Danny Spitz from Anthrax. Well, just Anthrax in general. But then Dan Spitz, had a custom Jackson Rhodes Flying V with the Ninja Turtles on it. And I was like, what the hell are those things? And then, yeah, found out it was the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. And so I got those original comics, the black and white ones, probably at, who's that man downtown?
Oh, Lang's
Muscatine.
Wholesale?
Lang's, yeah, I'm sure I got them at Lang's. And, yeah, and so I had those, and then I think I had probably a couple of the first ones, also, or the first color ones also, but that was about it. By the time the cartoon came out, I wasn't that into it. But yeah, I think I remember seeing the first Ninja Turtles movie and liked Casey Jones like everyone did. And
Sure, yeah.
but yeah, other than that, I don't know much about him, unfortunately. So I really enjoyed those first original comics.
Oh, they were fantastic.
Even though I was probably way too young to have been reading them.
Yeah.
But that's what Lang's existed for, as far as I can
yeah,
tell.
I mean,
So,
I was way too young to be doing a lot of things when I was 13, 14, whatever. You know what I mean? Like,
right.
I wish that I had actually delved into the original Turtles, because B. Dalton, that bookstore that used to be in the Muscatine Mall, they used to have all of the collections. So like,
Oh, yeah.
I wish that I would have tricked my mom into getting them, you know, but
Right.
and it probably wouldn't have even been tricking them, because I wouldn't have, at that point, I probably didn't realize how violent they actually were. Like the first issue, a lot of people don't realize this. Shredder was only a character in the first issue of the original series because, and you probably know this because you said that you had some of the original comics, but Splinter literally trained the Turtles to kill the Shredder at the end of the first issue. Like the whole first issue, he was training them to kill Shredder, and they actually killed Shredder at the end of the first issue. So he was not a reoccurring character in the comics at all. Wow. He was only a reoccurring character in the cartoon and all the other cartoons and, you know, stuff like, I mean, he's like their arch enemy in like the cartoon world and the movie world. But in the comics, he doesn't really exist, at least in the Mirage and Image series.
Right.
I haven't delved into the IDW series yet, so I don't know. That might be a complete revamp that they did, and you know, maybe they did bring the Shredder back. You know, I'm not really sure, but yeah. It's crazy, man.
Cool.
There's so much stuff out there, including records, music. Music is out there.
Oh, yeah.
And boy, ladies and gentlemen, do we have a treat of quite an assortment of records to talk about this week that both Eric and I were into. And I'm excited to talk about this batch.
Oh, nice. Cool.
So what, I don't remember who started last time. Do you, Eric?
I think you did.
All right,
maybe.
that's what I was going to say. I was going to just say, you go ahead and go first.
Okay. Well, let's see. Who should I start with? I guess I could start with ESG. The album's called Come Away with ESG. It was released in 1983. And it is just about the most goddamn fun record in the world. I absolutely adore this record. I'll try to describe it, and it shouldn't be hard because it is very simplistic, the music, as far as I'm concerned. But so it has like a really bass forward, kind of bass oriented, rhythmic, super rhythmic, no wave kind of sound to it, like Section 25 or Liquid, or even the Young Marble Giants, which I apparently talk about every single week now. But so it has elements like that. I would say especially like Liquid, very, very similar. But then there's also like this straight up 60s soul, like girl group kind of feel to things too, like the Dixie Cups or the Ronettes. And so you have these two things that come together. I think the production, like I said, it's mostly just bass, drums, and a vocalist who really does remind me of Ronnie Spector from the Ronettes. But then there's also some synth, and there's some dub elements to the production, a lot of delays. Organs come in and out sometimes. But this is actually starting to get a lot more attention now, which is why I thought I should mention it. Because somebody out there may have honestly heard this in like an old Navy commercial at this point. Or I think it's in some movie I watched recently, maybe Pineapple Express or some comedy or something. The song Dance, which is the second one on this record, is probably the one they're most known for. But anyway, I think if you check it out, you'll have a lot of fun with it. And I can't help. I think my picks have become a little happier lately. And I think it has to do with a lot of different things. But, you know, the vaccine getting distributed, it's getting kind of like spring-ish outside. I don't know. I'm sort of cautiously letting myself be a little more upbeat than I have been probably for the last few months.
You have to be cautious about being upbeat.
Yeah. I think in this day and age, maybe a little bit. But and so this record, I always put it on if I want to. Well, okay, here's a secret about me. I dance a lot. People are not going to believe that.
I don't believe it.
But I know, but I do. I seriously do.
I want to see you dance.
And, okay. Put on ESG. And I will.
I mean, I want you to film yourself, and I want you to send me the video clip.
For people who subscribe to our Patreon. No, I'm just kidding.
That's a great idea. We should start a Patreon for that sole purpose.
Yeah, you'll get to see a video of me dancing to
You know what? I'm going to do a poll on Instagram, and I'm serious. If we start a Patreon and we promise that people who subscribe will get a video, an exclusive video of Eric Whitaker dancing to ESG, will you join our Patreon and pay us?
Yeah, I'm into it. I'm into it. I'll do it. Anyway, I love to dance.
Keep that in mind, listeners.
This album always makes me do that. And even if I'm not doing that, it is just so much fun. And I can't say enough about it. I think the production's really interesting and cool. It moves, and it's just super fun. So, yeah, what'd you think, Dan?
Dude, I got to say, man, this is absolutely incredible. I listened to this, and right away I was hooked. I listened to it 3 times. And I had no idea this existed, but I think it makes sense when you talk about commercials. I'm pretty sure I heard this band in a commercial, and I remember like thinking this is just some of the funkiest music I've ever heard.
Yeah.
I love the minimalist approach, you know, like you mentioned. It's just like bass with a little bit of synthesizers and some singing and drums. And it's just sort of like a great combination of funk, soul, and post-punk. Now, for me, I hear a lot of stuff that came after it, which I think that this was probably a very influential band to a lot of people, a lot of bands that I specifically listen to. For example, the vocals... when there is vocals, reminds me a lot of like the stuff that Kathleen Hanna would do in La Tigra specifically.
Oh, yeah. I've never even thought of that. Absolutely. Good call,
Dance,
dude.
obviously, is a great groovy track. You Make No Sense, it reminds me of Yeah Yeah Yeahs and like Karen O and like the gossip and stuff. The bass playing on Parking Lot Blues specifically reminds me of Joe Lally from Fugazi. I took notes.
Sure, I can hear that.
I took notes on all your records this week because I just loved all of them. I think that it sounds like punk rock a lot of times, but with like a soul singer. And, you know, like I hear like reggae inspired stuff. About You, Moody. But one thing
Yeah.
in doing research about this band that I found really interesting, this is not on this album, but their track UFO is apparently one of the most sampled tracks in the history of hip hop.
Oh.
So
Yeah, I can see that. There are so many cuts on the drums on this. You could have an entire rap career just with sampled ESG drums.
absolutely.
For
and
sure.
Then, sorry to cut you off there, Eric, but
Not at all.
Moody, the song Moody sounds to me, this is going to sound really weird, but it sounds like house music that is made with real instruments instead of, well, I shouldn't say real instrument, but house music not made with electronic instruments, like organic house music. Like, and then I read that song, after I thought of that, I read that song was particularly influential in the UK house scene. So like this stuff, this ESG is pretty much, I would say, legendary, and that's probably one of the reasons why it's gaining more attention now, more than ever, because a lot of stuff that came after it, I think, was really influenced by it, and the whole Latigra, Kathleen Hanna thing, just when I heard that the vocals on, I don't even remember what specific song it was. But there was a specific song early. It was like one of the first 4 tracks. I was like, wow, there's no way that Kathleen Hanna hasn't heard this band.
For sure. Yeah, I can see that. I can see that now. I never put that together, but absolutely. Yeah. Makes sense.
Fantastic record. I'm so glad you put this on the list. I'm seriously, if I find this is a record that if I find it in physical form, I'm probably going to buy it because it's so good.
I've never seen it, but it might be out there. Someone will probably do a re-release if they haven't already too.
Even if it's not, it's possible on Spotify, which is good enough for me.
Yep. Yeah, me too.
So
nice.
All right. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to start my list off with something that is just, this is just a total out of left field. It's not my favorite record from this artist by a long shot, but I just found it so fascinating because I didn't even know it existed. And we've talked about this artist a little bit. Speaking of Casey Jones, he kind of reminds me of Casey Jones, like a combination of Casey Jones from the Ninja Turtles and I don't know, Lemmy or something. And that's Andrew W.K. And he put out this album. It's his 4th album called 55 Cadillac. Did you know about this record, Eric?
I had never listened to it before.
Neither had I. And I started listening to Andrew W.K. again recently because I just love, I Get Wet, I think, was one of the best rock records of the 2000s. And it sounded like a combination of Cheap Trick, Motorhead, and the song And We Danced by the Hooters. You know, it just has this Karate Kid score vibe to it. You know what I mean? Or it has that, you're the best, nothing, whatever that song is. Because Andrew W.K.'s lyrics are always kind of uplifting anyway. And I guess he's a motivational speaker now, which totally makes sense.
Yeah.
Andrew W.K. has always been kind of an anomaly. We talked briefly about some of there's conspiracy theories surrounding the guy that there might
Steve Mike.
Steve Mike, which I think we could do a whole episode on that. Because it's so fascinating. Because Andrew WK really was an anomaly that just came out of nowhere, in 2001. I remember somebody told me that it was Whitfield Crane, the old singer of Ugly Kid Joe, and that WK, that was his initials. Oh. So that somebody thought that, and honestly, I wouldn't be surprised if it was, but he's not. You know, that would make it even more hilarious.
Yeah.
But there's something about Andrew WK that I always found fascinating because while his music is at times just incredibly just short and to the point and stupid and all about partying and stuff, there was always like this serious side to it that I always kind of like. There was also like songs on I Get Wet that are they're sort of about just finding yourself and being young and dumb and love and things like that. You know what I mean? But he doesn't do it in like this really like sort of, cheesy way or whatever, like the song Girls Own Love. That's a great song,
Yeah, I love that.
Yeah, it's so good. And the Cheap Trick again, like Dream Police, like I'm pretty sure Andrew WK has listened to Dream Police quite a bit in his
I would
life.
guess so. Yeah.
But anyway, so this is his fourth album. He put out a couple of records, one called The Wolf, which was the follow-up to I Get Wet. And then right after that is when the Steve Mike stuff started to come to light, which those of you, I'm not going to take the time to explain what Steve Mike is, but those of you who don't know what that is, just look it up. There's stuff all over the internet about it. But anyway, and then Close Calls with Brick Walls was his third record, which that was released in Japan only because of the Steve Mike stuff. And you do listen to it, and it does sound like a different person, but, I'm sure Andrew WK with the musical talent, he's basically a musical prodigy. I mean, he plays he played all the instruments on like more than one of his albums, and I'm sure that he probably has like a Mike Patton thing going on with his voice. Maybe not specifically like that, but he can change pitch and change tone. You know what I mean? Sure. But anyway, the thing that's really interesting about 55 Cadillac is it's a concept record about a 55 Cadillac that is simply an instrumental solo piano album. And it's so strange and weird that when I listened to it, I was just intrigued. He stated, now this is in my research of the album, he stated that he wanted it to sound like freedom. He wanted the sound of a piano being played by a free man and just to record improvisations on a piano. I have no idea what this album has to do with a 55 Cadillac, but, I think that's awesome. Like, me personally, is it supposed to mimic like sort of like a ride in a 55 Cadillac? I think maybe so, but I'm not really sure. I'm not really sure what his decision making process was in naming the record 55 Cadillac. But it's extremely interesting. It's 8 tracks of just improvisation on a piano, and it's such a left field release for somebody like Andrew WK, who previously was doing songs like Party Hard, and that's what really got him, and playing like shows with like hardcore and punk bands, and somehow being embraced by the hardcore punk and metal community all at once, with his style of music. For him to do like a record like this is just extremely brave, and it's not something that I'm going to go back and listen to all the time, but I think it's really interesting. What are your thoughts about it, Erik?
Yeah, well, like you said, I Get Wet is phenomenal. It easily is on my seemingly infinite top 20 list of all time. That includes thousands of albums. But yeah, it is one of my favorites. I just love it. It's always funny to me when people describe what Andrew WK sounds like, and yours was, that combination of things. The one that I wrote down for this podcast was If you combine Journey, Poison, and Ministry, then you would
Dude,
have
that's
WK.
but that's pretty much the same thing as Cheap Trick, Motorhead,
Right.
and the Hooters.
Yeah. Yeah. Some of those vocals on I Get Wet are just like, it is straight up Al Jorgensen, like
yeah, definitely,
heavy
definitely.
screaming, you know, or even like KMFDM or something, like real industrial kind
Well,
of
and
stuff. But
one of the reasons why,
yeah.
sorry to interrupt, but one of
Not
the
at
reasons
all.
I picked Motorhead was because at times his voice reminds me of Lemmy too.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. But yeah, so I love that record. Someday I'll talk about the impact it had on my personal life, but I'm going to forego that now to tell a different story. So, Andrew WK played at Ribco a few years ago. It might be a decade ago. I don't know. I'm old, you know.
Who was the opening act,
I-
by the way?
I don't know if there was
Okay.
one. So this is how it worked out. And I may be totally wrong, but I think he was invited there by people that had to do with Day Trotter.
Okay, that makes sense.
And so I don't know if it was like an open show or if it was kind of an invite only show or something like that where there wasn't any advertising, no promotion for the show essentially. And so Brooke Strauss was invited and he invited me to go with him. So we went, and this album, I don't know if it was in support of this album, but this is the kind of stuff he played.
Oh shit!
So everyone there is expecting an Andrew WK concert, right? And it is, he's there, but he's playing the piano. There's a grand piano on the stage. And it might have been a baby grand. I don't want to oversell my story too much, but the group Mondo Drag is playing as his sort of backup band. And so
Wow.
there's
Mondo
just,
Drag.
he's just playing these sort of improv. Yeah. From the Quad Cities.
From the Quad Cities. Okay, got that had
Yeah.
Johnny Clooney in it, I think.
Yeah. And he went on to do Lord Green. Is that right?
No, not him.
Or no?
He was in like the Quiet Bears, but I think one of the members. Remember Noah's
Okay.
band, Sina Manzuro?
Yeah. Uh-huh.
He was the second singer in
Oh,
Sina
okay.
Manzuro. Noah Kester, one of our other friends that we that is just a horrible. I've pretty much decided that every friend that we mentioned should just be the most horrible person on earth.
Yeah. I mean, you're not lying. They're terrible people.
Every single
No.
one of them. You
but yeah,
might be next, listener. You might be next.
Yeah. Hope you never met us. So anyway, Mondo Drag is playing with them, and it's like this kind of music. It's all on the piano. It's a little jazzier than this because this is a little like rock oriented, and I'll get to that in a second. But so he plays these piano songs for a while, like maybe an hour.
Oh my
right?
gosh.
And everyone's just like, oh, he's really going to do this, you know? And everyone who went was told, like, Andrew WK is coming here. He's just going to play the piano. And that's it. He doesn't even have his band. How could he do anything else, you know? But still, people are sort of like, well, he's not even going to sing or, like, play the songs. He's just going to kind of play, like, improvisational jazz stuff on the piano. And, so it went on for a long time, and then everyone was like, okay, well, thanks so much. He was like, but he said, there's one other thing I wanted to say to you guys before we left. And he said, when it's time to party. And they started into Party Hard. And I've never, ever in my life seen anything more explosive and ecstatic and terribly violent than that moment at Ribco. I swear. I've seen Slayer, and this was insanely more violent than that. I mean, I've seen people crowd kill at hardcore shows. This was worse. Everyone was just climbing over each other, stomping on each other's heads, just grabbing at Andrew WK while they played Party Hard.
Oh man.
And it was terrifying, like, because it went from essentially an entire room of people bored and disappointed to a violent riot. Like, it looked like the Capitol on 1/6. Sorry, terrible.
No.
comparison.
That let's talk about the Capitol on 1/6.
But then
You use that to reference a lot of things. I think it's funny.
But no, and everyone just got all bloodied up, and they played a couple more of the rock songs, and then it really was over. But I've never seen something explode like that at a show, and it was really cool. So I don't know why I felt the need to tell that story, except that I think on one level Andrew WK understands building that tension and the release. And that's how this record works, is you have a long time of just piano, and it's like mostly rock and roll. Like, it reminds me of like if you isolated the piano tracks on Billy Joel songs. That's what it reminds me of.
Yeah.
And that's okay. But it also sounds like Andrew WK's songs, just it's all on piano and not the band. And so all that's cool. And it's cool to hear it played that way on the piano, you know, to hear basically just a slimmed down version of those songs. And so I didn't know it was improvisational. And so one of my notes I wrote down is, I wonder if this is how he writes his songs, because that's what it sounded like to me. Like, it's a fully realized song. He just has to go, okay, well, I already wrote the bass part with my left hand, and I already wrote the lead guitar part with my right hand.
Yeah.
You know? And so it's really cool. I don't think I'm going to return to it and listen to it very often, if ever. And that's not me trying to be a jerk. It's just like, I didn't get a lot out of it other than, wow, he's really good, and wow, I wonder if this is how he constructs his songs. And it was sort of a behind the scenes interest in Andrew WK.
Yeah, the story
that made me enjoy it.
The story behind the record is a lot more interesting than the actual album itself.
Right. And so I thought it was cool, but again, I probably won't go back to it.
Yeah, it sounds like to me this record.
I did enjoy listening to it once through.
Sure, yeah. The record sounds to me like if Motorhead and Cheap Trick and the Hooters song what is it? And We Danced, if they all decided to just do an improv piano album.
Right.
That's what that like if Lemmy made an improv piano album, no, I'm just kidding. But I will say that the best Andrew WK album by far, in my opinion, though, actually, is not I Get Wet. Even though that would be my second favorite, very close second. But he released a record after this, his fifth album called You're Not Alone.
Yeah.
That album is a masterpiece, if you ask me.
All right. I'll have to check it out. I'm sure I've heard it, but not enough to really dig in, I guess.
Very underrated, in my opinion. The last track on it, which is the title track, if I'm not misremembering, there is no reason why that song shouldn't be the like the victory song in every single movie where there's like a victory. Like, it's just so good. Like, yeah, and it's a very positive record too. There's a lot more to Andrew WK than meets the eye. At first, on first whim, you really think that it's just some bonehead or something, you know?
Right.
Like.
Well, go ahead. Sorry.
Like a real life Casey Jones, you know what I mean?
Right.
But like,
I get so excited about Andrew WK.
Dude, he's fantastic. He's the man, dude.
Yeah. Just to give, if anyone thinks that Andrew WK is just stupid and silly, which he is, don't get me wrong, but if you think it's just that, here's a little thing that I came up with. listen to I Get Wet and pretend it's a concept album about being a vampire.
Dude, there were vampires in the...
It works really well, actually.
there were vampires in the plot of the Ninja Turtles comics I was reading this week.
Oh, shit.
Yeah, the vampires bit Raphael and he turned into this big old, like, monster. And now he can't go back into his regular form because of something. I don't remember why. Like, there's some genetic code that it broke. And yeah, dude, and then Donatello is small now. Like he's like the size of a mouse. And so and then like Michelangelo's trapped on this alien planet.
Oh man, that sounds wild.
And then Leonardo, Splinter, well, dude, I'm sorry. I don't know how many people are going to read this 2001 series in 2021, 20 years later.
I don't know either.
I'm going to give away so much spoilers if I keep going. So let's go on to your next record, Eric.
Nice. All right. Let's see. Sorry, I'm really taking a while to decide here. Let's go with, and I don't know if I'm going to say this right, DOSONE?
Yeah,
is that
that's right? DOSONE,
okay.
Yes.
DOSONE. So I didn't know and still don't know anything about DOSONE, so I'm going to depend on Dan to flesh this out a little bit. But okay, so my friend Phil, who makes music as Mall of America, and actually he just put something up on Bandcamp that is music that him and our late friend Sean Jones made.
Oh yes, I saw something about that
in the past. I don't know exactly the details, but that's just called Jones and Mall. So that's really cool. And it sounds awesome. So
I'll have to check that out for sure.
Yeah. Phil told me about Cloud Dead or Clouded.
Yes.
Okay. And I really enjoyed it. I liked it a lot. And so I saw that DOSONE was a member or a contributor or whatever to Cloud Dead. So I hardly ever listen to the new album by people. And I hardly ever listen to the first album by people because I just don't think they're representative. So I picked the second record by DOSONE called Ha from 2005. H-A. I wasn't just having some kind of fit there. Ha is the name of the album. I liked it a lot. It's very strange and dark and heavy. And it's hip-hop-ish and funky, but it's also very experimental. There's tons of vocoder on it that sort of remind me of like Tobacco or something like that.
Yes.
There's a lot of big epic soundscapes, a lot of atmospheric sound, but it's also very rhythmic. I don't want to make it sound like it is noise, even though there's some of that there. I think it's really nerdy and brooding, which is a fun combination. It makes you feel kind of empowered, yet sort of damaged. It's kind of like and I know Marilyn Manson's in trouble and stuff, but it's kind of that same feeling, or even like Korn, if you were into that at some point. Like being nerdy and brooding is somehow empowering. And so I don't know, I pick up on a little bit of that element here too. The last minute of the record is insane, and it's pretty chilling, but also hilarious. The whole thing has sort of an outsider element to it, almost like, I don't know, like Daniel Johnston or like those Shay St. John videos, if you ever watch those.
Yeah.
And not just the Shay St. John voice, but also the actual music in those videos. And so I don't know. I felt like this was really dark, but sort of fun somehow, and pretty out there. And I'm excited to dig into more because I can't imagine this represents what DOSONE sounds like all the time. I assume that it either gets weirder or it gets more like hip hop as we go on. But for it to stay here and for them to have so many records, it seems improbable because it looked like they had tons of records.
Well, DOSONE is a rapper.
Okay,
He's one dude.
Right. So, yeah, it looks like there's a bunch of other records. So, I'm excited to see where they go from this one. So, yeah.
Sure.
So yeah, but drop some knowledge on us, Dan,
Well,
because you know a lot about DOSONE.
well, I don't know a lot about him, but what I do know is that he's the co-founder of the Anticon label, which back in the day when I was getting into like underground indie hip hop, like all the Definitive Jux and Rhymesayers stuff and Kool Keith and Del the Funky Homo Sapien and all that stuff, that was all kind of putting out their most groundbreaking work at that time. The Anticon was one of those that was kind of thrown in. You know, yet another hip hop label to kind of watch out for people who don't want to listen to 50 Cent, but they still want to hear, you know, rap music.
Yeah.
Also, there's a guy named Soul who puts out a lot of cool stuff on that label as well. And also there's the producer Gel, spelled Jel. There's also Alias, and they're all kind of like the co-founders of this Anticon label.
Cool.
Another really interesting group called Restiform Bodies, and you mentioned Cloud Dead. There's also another guy named Y, spelled WHY question mark.
Cool.
And they've always just been like the weirdest hip hop out of. I mean, Definitive Jux got kind of weird with like Aesop Rock and even like the early LP stuff, like way pre Run the Jewels, and you know, the production on like Cannibal Ox's first record and stuff like that. But Anticon was always like just really like pushing the boundaries. And so this is DOSONE's, I believe it's his second record, right?
I'm just going by Spotify.
Okay, yeah.
The second one they have on there.
I think it is his second one. I'm not really sure. He has a lot of releases and a lot of collab albums. But one of the things that got me into like DOSONE, and I don't really listen to a lot of DOSONE, but he was in a group. Well, it was I guess more of a collective back in like 97 called Deep Puddle Dynamics. And they put out this record, and oh man, I can't remember what the title of it is. I just call it self-titled, but I know it's not self-titled. It's something about the rain. Okay. The only reason why I call it self-titled is because the title's not anywhere on the cover. It just says Deep Puddle Dynamics. But this was a collective / group that featured all Anticon artists: Alias, the producer Gel, DOSONE, Soul, and then one rapper that was not an Anticon rapper, and that is one of my favorite rappers, Slug from the group Atmosphere, who I know that you enjoyed their latest record. And so it was very weird now in retrospect, it's very weird and interesting that Slug was involved in that collective because his style is completely different than like the Anticon, you know what I mean? Sort of thing. But yeah, DOSONE, his first record, I've heard his first record, and I can't remember what that one is called, but that one is more hip hop than this one. And I think, because I haven't heard anything past this record, because this is the first time I've heard this record, I wouldn't be surprised if he just kind of continued in this direction, because it seems like a lot of the artists on that label, that's what kind of happened, is after they got through like their hip hop sort of phase, they just started to like do more experimental stuff. Because I would definitely consider this experimental, like music, hip hop type stuff.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, there's a lot of great stuff on here. Like, you know, he's got just this great weird rapping style that has, like you said, robotic vocals kind of thrown in. Sometimes it almost seems like it's for no reason. And then parts of it sound like, I don't know if you're familiar with like MC Paul Marmon or like MC Frontalot, like the sort of nerdcore rap.
Okay.
You know, like that was kind of happening in like the 2000s. Parts of it sound like even Daft Punk or something like that.
Sure.
Who just
I can hear that.
broke up, by the way.
Yeah.
Parts of it sound like trip hop, you know. It's a very entertaining listen. Some of my favorite songs on here was like The Universe in Six Jumps. I love that one.
Yeah.
By Horoscope 1 and 2. The beat on that is insane.
Yeah, I love that.
It sounds like
That's probably my favorite one.
It sounds like the
great.
Beastie Boys mixed with like spoken word, techno, the robotic vocals and stuff.
Yeah.
The end of the song Axe Jaw blew me away too.
Yeah,
because it sounds like
sure.
a John Carpenter record or something.
Yeah.
And then he all of a sudden just out of the blue starts freestyle rapping over like a beatbox.
Right. I know.
There's this weird
It's
like
so weird.
sci-fi element. And actually there is
Yeah.
one record that came to mind kind of. Clipping Splendor and Misery. Parts of it.
Yeah.
I wouldn't be surprised if like at least one of the members of Clipping were maybe inspired by like anti-con
Sure.
stuff.
I can hear that. Yeah.
Yeah, it's just really interesting, man. There's just
Cool.
I kind of feel this record is also, and I kind of feel Anticon in general were kind of ahead of their time. But I also feel that way about a lot of the underground hip hop that was going on between like we'll say the years 97 to like 2005 or something, you know, because if you think about it, a lot of what's going on in the mainstream now is very, very much inspired. Like, for example, I talked about the connection of like MF Doom and like guys like Earl Sweatshirt and Tyler the Creator and stuff like that. Like, there's a clear influence because at the time in like 2004, the hip hop or even just the music listening world in general just wasn't ready for like a record as you know, dense, I think, as like, you know, Mad Villain, and certainly wasn't ready for something as crazy as DOSONE.
Right.
But now there's a lot of that crazy stuff is kind of becoming mainstream a little bit, or at least
For sure.
like even like I can hear like Fire Tools a little bit in this, you know?
Yeah.
Just the approach to how he did the compositions, and some of it sounded completely spontaneous. Some of it sounded like he was just maybe in his bedroom, and you know what I mean? Some of it maybe was improv. I mean, who knows? But this is his first album was definitely more straightforward rapping with that nasally style. So it was like really like, I can definitely say that there's a clear difference between the music of his first record and this one.
Okay.
I'm curious to check out his later, like, you know, because he's still putting out records today.
Right.
So I'm curious to hear what direction he went in. If some artists kind of go back to, you know, what they did before. I'm curious if he ever did that or if he just kind of got more and more insane as time went on.
Right. Yeah, I'm excited to hear more by him for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, no, this was a great pick, Eric, for sure.
Cool. Nice.
Okay, so the next one I'm going to pick, this is an example of a band that, you know, I got into in the last couple years that I'm surprised I never got into like when I was younger, because this band was just thrown in my face all the time from a lot of different people. And that's BAUHAUS. And this is their second album, Mask. I don't know if I like this record as good as I liked the first album, In a Flat Field, but I like it probably just as good, for maybe different reasons. But for some reason, this is the record that I really dug last week. I think it's a better sounding record if you're going to talk from the perspective of like, it's less noisy, but that's part of what I liked about like In a Flat Field was that it basically sounded like a post-punk goth record, you know? But I thoroughly enjoy the, somewhat disjointed, noisiness that I do think some of it is. And when I say noisy, I don't mean like noise music, just there's just definitely some abrasiveness. Maybe abrasiveness is a better term.
Yeah.
But there's still elements of that from the first album, but there's a lot of other things going on here that wasn't on the first record, like acoustic guitars, and there's like some like funk and even like reggae influences going on. The opening track, Hair of the Dog, as well as Kick in the Eye, both kind of have that sort of funkiness kind of going on. The Man with the X-Ray Eyes is really cool. Hollow Hills is probably my favorite. I just like the creepy sort of vocal effect. But I really like this whole album. Of Lilies and Remains. Like when I talk about sort of like the funk reggae elements, like that track in particular, I could see like fitting in on like a Talking Heads record, and that kind of wasn't like that sort of element wasn't, I don't feel was as present on In a Flat Field. I don't really know like which one I like better, but I love both of those records. And I also like the third record. Haven't gotten around to the fourth record yet, but I actually have the whole BAUHAUS discography on my Spotify. And when I listen to this, for some reason, like I just had to go back and listen to it a couple more times. And yeah, I really like it. I know you're a BAUHAUS fan, aren't you, Eric?
Yeah, I am. I would say In the Flat Field is. I know that I am a very hyperbolic person.
Sure.
Everything is my favorite, blah, blah, blah.
Sure.
It's the best. It's the funniest. It's the stupidest, whatever. But In the Flat Field is very seriously one of the biggest records of my life. Like, it's up there with Velvet Underground and Nico. It's up there with the first Violent Femmes record. Like, things that literally changed the trajectory of the music I make for the rest of my life.
Like Nickelback?
So, yeah, mostly, yeah. I mean, that's the pinnacles, Nickelback. But no, so In the Flat Field, it to me is almost untouchable. I mean, there's a couple things on it that are a little silly or whatever. But, I mean, it's ground zero for so many things. People would say goth or whatever. And it is 100%. It's
Absolutely.
like how Black Sabbath is ground zero for heavy metal. It just is. It's where everything came together.
Yes.
And everything led to that moment, and everything after that moment it comes from that. And that's how the first BAUHAUS record is. With that being said, Mask has never really done it for me. I love a lot of the songs. I love Hollow Hills. It's one of my favorites. And there are those moments where things slow down and they get creepy again. The production is better than In the Flat Field in a lot of ways. But for me, Mask has always seemed a little rushed. And I don't know if that's true, but they didn't know they were going to be so successful, and they were like, we got to get in there and make a record. And so a lot of this feels really well written, well played, and well recorded, and a lot of it to me feels kind of like filler, like they were playing in the studio and they just sort of played the drums and they just sort of played a bass line over those drums, and Peter Murphy sort of sang atonally over that. There's really no like melody or song structure to a lot of it, and it doesn't quite do it for me as much as In the Flat Field, or even like The Sky's Gone Out, or Burning from the Inside is also really good. None of them can touch the first one for me. I think that's, like I said, just an untouchable record to me. But Mask still has a lot of the elements that made In the Flat Field good, especially Daniel Ash's guitar tone is just as abrasive and downright terrifying, in places.
Absolutely.
It's one of the best guitar tones out there, and it's technically terrible. Like, it's worse than the Jesus and Mary Chain guitar tone, which is almost unlistenable. Also one of my favorite guitar tones ever. But yeah, it's never really been a Bauhaus record that does it for me all the way through. I do like a number of the songs, and I like the tones that they create. And yeah, the drumming's really cool. I think Haskins, is that the drummer's name?
Yeah,
Kevin Haskins.
I'm not sure.
he does a lot of that really almost like tribal drumming, really tom oriented, and I love all that. So I like this record, but if I'm going to listen to a Bauhaus record, it's probably not the one I'm going to go to.
Sure.
So
Sure.
Not to talk smack on it too much.
No.
It's
and I agree with
yeah.
you. In a Flat Field is absolutely incredible. I mean, that record is, I think, definitely. And when I said that Masks was a better sounding record, I don't necessarily think that's enhanced it or any part of
Right.
In a Flat Field. Part of the reason why it was awesome was because of how it was recorded, and because
Yeah,
it was noisy and abrasive. I mean, it's just
you
like,
imagine they're in a cave.
yeah,
for
exactly.
real.
I mean, that's part of the awesomeness of In a Flat
Yeah.
Field. I do
Right.
think that they did a lot of interesting things on this record. But yeah, I kind of go back and forth. At the end of the day, I probably agree with you. I probably think that In a Flat Field is probably the one that I would revisit more often. And I would probably say is my favorite Bauhaus record. But my favorite Bauhaus song isn't even it's a non-album track. And that's, well, there's so many good non-album tracks by Bauhaus actually, but Dark Entries, man, I love that track.
It is. It's amazing.
It's so good.
Absolutely.
And it's
Yeah.
basically, I'm going to say it basically is on In a Flat Field, even though it wasn't originally. But the reissue, it's the opening track on the reissue.
Right. And it works great for that.
Yeah.
Actually.
It probably should have been the opening track
Yeah.
anyway. Because honestly, when you listen to it in that context, the actual opening track, and I don't remember, what is the actual opening track? I
As a
don't have
Double Dare.
That's it, Double Dare.
Yeah.
It sounds like a second track. It doesn't sound like an opening track.
I
really.
agree. Yeah. Yeah.
So I thought it was an odd choice that they opened the record up with that anyway.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's probably why they put it on the reissue.
Yeah.
They probably just were like, "Hey, why didn't we put this on here?" Like,
Well, it's cool. It's cool to hear. I've always felt like Bauhaus had a real strong start, obviously, and then I feel like they were changing and growing and morphing and things like that. But I think ultimately they sort of stopped doing this kind of funky syncopation stuff, which for me is a good thing. For other people, maybe that's what they liked about Bauhaus. But and they started to go in a little poppier direction. But what's cool is you basically get to continue that direction if you want to as a listener with Love and Rockets. Like, I think Bauhaus got to a certain point, and then Love and Rockets essentially continued on that trajectory. And so it's kind of cool. And Tones on Tail is definitely the in-between for sure. And so I think it's cool that, except for Peter Murphy, all those guys kind of kept playing together, and we sort of get to listen to that evolution over numerous bands, but also many years. So
right.
that's just something I wanted to throw in there, is like, if you like Bauhaus and you're like, oh, I wish they would have made more music, you can essentially continue listening to them for decades.
Do you know the reason why Peter Murphy kind of quit playing with those guys?
No, and I don't know if they quit playing with him or vice versa or whatever. I have no idea.
So the fourth album, which I haven't listened to yet, the whole time that they were recording that record, Peter Murphy was ill. Like he had pneumonia and all kinds of crazy shit going on. So they just like he sang on like I think 3 or 4 of the tracks, and then the other members did like vocals on it because they, yeah. It's interesting you mentioned the whole rushed thing because I noticed I read a review on Mask that actually said kind of the same thing. And if you do look at the 4 records that were released in the 80s, I mean, they came out one year apart. So I think it definitely does seem like I think there's something to what you just said about how they kind of were just like, oh, we need to get this record out pronto. And I think that kind of just didn't sit well with Peter Murphy, that they kind of essentially did a record without him. And then after that is when they broke up and they formed Love and Rockets, and Peter Murphy went on. I think he did a solo career for a while or something.
Yeah, and it's pretty good. I mean, I love Peter Murphy's voice. And
absolutely.
He could sing anything, and I'd be pretty into it probably.
Sure.
I even listen to other bands because they sing like Peter Murphy in the band. Like,
and there's
a neo kind of goth band called She Wants Revenge.
Oh yeah, yep.
I love them, and I know for a fact the reason is because the guy sounds just like Peter Murphy, and which is 100% on purpose. It's not an accident by any means.
No, not at all. Not at all.
Yeah. So, but yeah, and then there's also Tones on Tail, who I think technically probably only had one record in like 1984, but I think that it was Daniel Ash and Kevin Haskins and David J, I believe. So I think it's everyone but Peter Murphy.
Wow.
So yeah, and then I think Love and Rockets was Daniel Ash and David J and Kevin Haskins. I think it's all of them. So
they did they had a reunion album in like the 2000s, like
right. Yeah.
But wouldn't it have been great if they would have called Tones and Tails everyone but Peter Murphy?
Yeah, pretty much.
That would have been great if they just would have named it that.
Yeah, everyone but Peter.
Everyone but Peter. Like the first song is some TV theme show.
Yeah.
Or TV theme song, excuse me.
Oh, man.
It'd be even worse if it was an actual show, like for 30 minutes. Like it's a 30-minute episode of a show audio. That's like the first track.
I like it.
Yeah.
Maybe we should write that ourselves. Maybe we should write a musical about Peter Murphy quitting.
everyone, but or just write an entire sitcom about it. Just like have somebody dressed as Peter Murphy. And at the end of at the end of every episode, we're like, oh, Peter.
Yeah. Then he just acts all depressed the whole time.
Just because you weren't in Tones and Tails.
Oh boy.
Oh,
yeah.
Man.
All right.
So that's a great segue into your next pick. Well, maybe I'm gonna say it's a great segue into that.
So my third choice for this week was Charlie. I still don't know if you say MEGIRA or MEGIRA.
Yeah.
I would guess MEGIRA. That's how I'm gonna say it. Charlie MEGIRA and the Modern Dance Club. The record's called Love Police. I think I mentioned this last time that Joe, the singer from Peanut Ricky, told me about Charlie MEGIRA. And the reason they told me about it is the record Tomorrow's Gone, which is very twangy, Twin Peaks-ish, reverb, all the stuff I love and I'm always talking about. So I love that record, and we talked about that fake soundtrack called You're Not From Around Here. Charlie MEGIRA's on that.
Right.
So I decided to give this a listen.
Oh, okay. So he was one of the artists on that. That makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah. I think the song Tomorrow's Gone was the song on that comp. So, this one's pretty different though, actually. It's not all different, but I had started to make a list of things that you might, if you like it, you might like this. And it turned a little ridiculous. So I'll just say them all. I'll say them as I typed them. For fans of The Modern Lovers, John Spencer, Jay Retard, but also kind of revivalist things that do sort of like sambas and things. So like King Kong and Barbecue Show,
Yep.
and like Shannon and the Clams even.
Never heard
But
them.
then it's kind of like King Kong and Barbecue Show. There's a lot of
Sure,
rumbas and things, but also it's very much like Dead Moon
Yep.
and Mazzy Star and Sonic Youth and
Re-
Bauhaus.
real,
I mean, it's
real quick.
all over.
Right after I listened to this record, last track, you know how Spotify will start playing the first track or another track from another artist that's recommended if you like. They started playing a Dead Moon after I
Okay.
got
Yeah.
So,
I mean,
there you
it
go.
just, it's, I won't say it sounds like Dead Moon, but it feels like it, if that makes any sense. Like
Absolutely.
vocally, it might sound like it a little, but it's noisy. It's like rock and roll music. It's twangy. It's dark. It's gothy. It's fun. It's irreverent. I don't know. Somehow it all works together. Even though it jumps from one thing to the next, every song, it somehow still creates a cohesive atmosphere. And I thought it was a lot of fun. It is a little jarring, though. I won't say it's a record you can climb into and just live there. Like, I think it's jarring in its own way between the songs. But I don't know. If some part of you loves Dead Moon and Jonathan Richman, then you'll like this. So I don't know how else to describe it. So what'd you think, Dan?
Man, I thought this was just an amazing record. I mean, just so many interesting things going on. I mean, like the first track is essentially kind of like a sound collage or something. I know that like when I saw that there were 31 tracks, I was like, is this a double album? But then I saw the length of all the songs.
Right.
I'm like, oh, okay, well, I mean, the actual length, this is like less time than some albums that have 4 songs, you know,
Right.
like a Sun record or something is 76 minutes long with like 4 tracks or something, you know, or whatever, you know. I'm gonna say that I'm not very well versed on Sun, but you know what I mean. Drone bands do that a lot. But yeah, and then all of a sudden the second track is like this instrumental surf rock sort of thing.
Yeah.
Then it goes into like straight up punk. That sounds like a cross between, to me, some of the punkier songs sounded like a cross between like Dead Kennedys and Chrome, like early Chrome. The song Existence really got me thinking. Another band. Earlier sort of like recordings from this band, but the riff at the beginning of Existence sounds like Melvins, like Ozma era Melvins, the second record.
Wow.
With like blood curdling screams that almost reminded me of like Unsane or something.
It gets there.
Yeah,
It does
and then-
go that far.
And then
Just as a warning.
there's like guitar solos with like classic rock boogie thrown in. There's like a spy music on it, kind of. Lots of reverb and twang. Some of it sounds like spaghetti western type stuff. And then parts of it, like you said, sound like Sonic Youth, particularly the parts where Sonic Youth have lots of feedback.
Yeah, for sure.
Used to be Psychic Youth, yes. That sounds like BAUHAUS mixed with the Pixies to me.
Yeah.
And, you know, there's stuff that sounds like movie scores.
Yeah.
And then it ends with just a straight up blues song called Dead Girls Blues. It's like 31 tracks of just, I mean, it's almost like bam, bam, bam. This is the history of rock and roll right in front of you. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
like,
as like the history of garage and primitive and punk rock.
I mean,
yeah.
Some of it sounds like it belongs on Amphetamine Reptile. Some of it sounds like it belongs on, I don't know, Ipecac. And then some of it sounds like it belongs, like you said, alongside Jay Reatard, Ty Segall, and stuff like that.
And then other parts of it sound like they should be on Sun Records.
Yeah,
so,
yeah. And then some parts of it even sound like they should be on like Stax or Motown.
Yeah.
It's just...
It goes everywhere.
It goes
really
everywhere.
does.
And most of the songs, they're almost like little ideas. Most of them are...
I agree.
Just like, a minute long, but they sound so complete. They don't sound like incomplete ideas,
No, they sound fully formed. They sound like someone realizing that if they kept going, they would just be repeating themselves. So what's the point?
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, it's just, man. Yeah, this was a great pick. 5 out of 5.
Nice.
I mean, I love this record. This is another one that, piqued my curiosity so much that I went back and listened to it. Like,
nice.
I didn't listen to the whole thing a couple of times because, like you said, after you listen to it once, you kind of I kind of went back and just listened to my favorite parts of it.
Right, for sure. Yeah.
But it's going to be I'm going to keep it on my Spotify playlist, or at least in my memory.
Nice.
It's another record that I think if I found it on vinyl for the right price, I probably would buy a physical copy of it if I came across it. And I don't buy physical music anymore.
Right.
Not because I don't want to, because I want to. I just don't have the money for it.
Yeah. Well,
I don't know how some of these people do. Like, people who I know that are poor. Hey, I just bought Metallica's Black record on, I don't know, vinyl that had blood in it for like $60. Really? Because last week you were talking about how... But anyway, nonetheless, I'm not...
It's probably connected.
Yeah, probably. And you know what? Actually, I can't talk because I do the same shit all the time. I can't talk. I don't buy Metallica albums with blood in them, but I buy other things that have blood in them. So...
I hope you're talking about comic books.
Yeah, comic books that are inked with blood. You remember,
okay, good.
You remember the whole thing? That actually happened with Kiss, the Kiss comic book.
Yep. I do. I heard that. Yeah.
I think it was I don't think it was actually inked in blood, but they actually had
they dropped a drop a piece.
Yeah, dropped a drop or something like that. But for real though, I'm the same exact way. I'll be talking about how, oh man, I got to make my cell phone payment. Oh, look, it's this thing. Yeah. And it costs the same amount of money to pay my cell phone bill. I think I'm going to get this thing, and then complain about how, I can't make ends meet. I do the same fucking thing. I do it all the time. I think we have to in this country. It just happens. You know what I mean?
It's hard not to. Yeah.
If you're into stuff, if you're into anything, it happens. You know what I mean? It's crazy. So my next, listeners, I wasn't trying to I do the same thing. Trust me. I'm an idiot a lot of times, but, anyway, PULSARS, self-titled record. I said that I wasn't going to pick it as one of my picks last week, but I just had to. I actually, this is the last CD that I actually bought. The last physical CD that I bought. And it's fairly recently that I bought it. And it's not on Spotify. And I don't like to listen to records just on YouTube. So this is, I kind of had to buy this, I know that you've got some stuff to say about this record, Eric, I'm sure.
Yeah.
But for me, I mean, this is just another weird gem that was around when I was in high school that I'm both surprised and also I'm not surprised that I didn't discover it then. I mean, it's one of those weird releases that I don't want to say mainstream, but it's definitely when you listen to it, it definitely is just kind of on the surface, it sounds like it's just kind of like pop songs, which it basically is, So it definitely is a little I guess, conventional in that sense. But it also just has all these like weird, quirky elements, which a lot of that is because of the synthesizers and stuff, which really wasn't a popular thing in like '97 to combine rock
Tell me
music.
about it.
That's and when we
Just
get
kidding.
when we get to you, Eric, I know that you're gonna have a lot to say
Sorry.
about this. No. Totally understandable. But so this band was a two-piece from Chicago, and the two members were brothers. They did release a couple of EPs, but then they were signed to, and I thought this was really interesting, Herb Alpert's label, Alamo Sounds. So they were an indie band. Now, I found in my research, the album was described as in the moment, behind the times, and looking to the future. And honestly, in '97,
Yeah.
I couldn't think of a better description for this record. That really is just like how I would describe it, because I started thinking about it. It's in the moment because it sounds like a '90s rock band, like a '90s alternative rock band.
Yeah.
Behind the times because they're using at the time, which was considered kind of outdated synthesizers type stuff. Like, I mean, new wave had happened, and like it wasn't cool to really embrace synthesizers in the '90s, and you know what I mean? At least not in the way they were doing it.
Yeah.
And then looking to the future, because guess what? This is another group that's just kind of was ahead of their time in a lot of ways. I mean, my favorite songs on here, like Tunnel Song, Suffocation, Submission Song, which I mentioned on the last, that song reminds me of something you would have written, which I'm sure we're going to hear about why that is. Silicon Teens, which is about the group Silicon Teens. It's just a really fun, like, Silicon Teens, for the people who don't know, is about a synth novelty band, basically. Maybe that's not the right way, but that's kind of what it sounded like.
They're
to
pretty
me.
novel. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, because they did a bunch of synth covers, basically. Right. It kind of reminds me a little bit of like the Moog cookbook that came out,
Yeah.
Ode to a Devil, Save You. I mean, it's kind of like, to me, this record is just the best parts of '90s alternative rock with kind of a punk edge to it, and '80s new wave mixed into one. Like, it totally was a record of its time. It sounds like it was recorded in the late '90s, because it was, but using like '80s technology. I don't know if that's. I mean, am I kind of on the mark there, Eric?
I think so.
What do you have to say?
Yeah.
What do you have to say about this record?
Well, first, let me say that I haven't listened to this record since probably the year 2000. That has to be probably the last time.
2000.
Yeah, right.
You remember, like, when he did? I'm sorry to interrupt, but you remember when
all.
he did that? You remember when he did that?
On Conan?
Conan, he did that until like the year 2005.
Right. It was awesome.
Okay, I'm sorry.
But so the reason I haven't listened to this in 20 plus years is because it is 100. I don't know if I have another record that's so intrinsically linked to a time period in my life. And even though I talk about a lot of music from the past and things, I really don't enjoy nostalgia. Like, I really don't like thinking about the past and like really spending time there. I'll reference it or I'll remember a funny thing that happened or whatever, but I don't sit around and drink and talk about high school and shit like that. It's just not who I am. So, so this record, I haven't listened to it in a long time. It's because it was so linked to a specific time period in my life. And that time period was the time period I had a band called Gimpy. And that was from basically 97 when this record came out till about
Legendary.
yeah, sure. Until about 2000. And yeah, so this really took me back, and I really enjoyed it, and it's fun, and it was actually fun to go back and think about some things. Like the first song, Wisconsin.
Oh yeah.
The first road trip, my current wife, not me, my only wife, who was my girlfriend at the time. This had to have been in 2000 probably. We drove to Wisconsin Dells to Tommy Bartlett's Robot World because of this song. The song's about Robot World.
Hold on a second.
Okay.
What is this place called?
It's called Tommy Bartlett's Robot World.
And where is it?
In Wisconsin Dells.
And what is it?
It is basically a glorified science center.
Oh wow.
It's amazing. It is amazing, but it's so trashy. There's videos on on YouTube of Robot World and Tommy Bartlett's Robot World, and people walk through it and like give you the tour on video. Just watch one of them. It is
I'm gonna
so
have to.
fun. It's the funnest. And
This sounds like the perfect record to be listening to on the road trip.
oh yeah, it was. And I mean, I've probably listened to this record. I can't honestly even tell you. It just was playing in the background for 4 or 5 years of my life. And so, yeah, and I always assumed that if I did listen to it, I would get sad and nostalgic and blah, blah, blah. But instead, I actually really enjoyed it. And so I guess at the time, I'll talk about that a little bit. Yeah, it was not cool to play music like this. Gimpy was a new wave band, and as far as we knew when we started it, we were the only current new wave band in 1997.
You should really replace the word. You should really replace new wave with amazing. I'm not kidding. You should just say you were an amazing band, because you were, Eric. You were.
Well, thanks, but I mean, it was purposefully new wave, and I don't know. We didn't know of anyone else doing that, where they were like, well, let's sound like Devo. Like no one wanted to sound like Devo. It was passé. It was lame. And so as time went on, we found other bands that were like us, like Pulsars and like even, like Trans Am and things that might have been noisier. They still had that same kind of idea. And so we had to start collecting and listening to as much as we could of other people that were similar, just to feel connected. And so, but it wasn't very popular. We tried really hard, and people didn't really get into it. With that being said, though, this record's awesome. And this is what Gimpy would have sounded like if I would have been a more experienced songwriter, and if we were able to have produced our recordings ourselves. And I just loved revisiting this. I had so much fun listening to it. And the thing is the reason I liked it was all that new wave, synth, sci-fi, novelty element of it. But upon re-listening to it, it's so good. These songs are so good and so well produced, and it's like epic at times. It's almost like Polyphonic Spree or Tripping Daisy or even Enon or whatever, like these, or even Flaming Lips at times, where it's like big, epic, grandiose moments. Even Neutral Milk Hotel and stuff, like trumpets come in and horn sections, and it's like really, really good music. And I wish I wouldn't have been so adverse to going back and listening to it again, because I feel like I would have enjoyed it this whole time, And so that's the funny thing. Like, I try to avoid nostalgia, but at the same time, it gets in the way sometimes of re-experiencing something. And so that's, whatever. I don't know what that is. A little bit of insight that I should have listened to this more in the past. But it was super fun to revisit. I'm super glad you picked it. And when you first picked it, I was like, oh shit, I have to listen to this record now. And I've been avoiding it for so long, but it's awesome. I really enjoyed it. So yeah.
Yeah, the songs on it are amazing. There's you know, I was really impressed with what they were able to achieve with just two guys.
Mm-hmm.
It's so underrated too. Like nobody.
Yeah.
It's just a lost gem.
I agree. Yeah.
And the horn sections make it sound very, you know, during those parts. I also just the lyrics too. The lyrics are just
they're a lot of fun.
And some of them are just so dumb. Like
oh, for sure.
You know, just like like Submission. You know, Submission song, Submission to the Master. That is so good.
It's so good.
And again, that totally reminds me of something you would have written with Gimpy. Like that song in particular.
I can see that.
Tunnel song, you know, Pittsburgh has a real cool tunnel. Like it's just about these tunnels.
Yeah.
Like
I mean, I love tunnels. I get it.
But then you have songs like that are just really, I feel, almost like vulnerable and honest, like Suffocation, like love's like suffocate, and like the melodies sound like almost like Beach Boys or something, you know, like it's and then you have the Silicone Teens, which is just meant to be like that song in particular reminds me of like They Might Be Giants, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Or something like. It's just there's so many things going on in this record. I wish they would have made more stuff, and I wish they would have eventually just gotten, but you know, at the same time, I'm also kind of glad this is the only artifact from the band that exists. Yeah. There's sort of like mixed emotions. Those of you who are into like anything that we just described here, check this record out. It's on YouTube. Unfortunately, they didn't put it on Spotify. But it's just a really bizarre artifact from like 97 that, you know, it just seems like only a few people discovered it, but the ones that are into it are really into it. And also, if you want to, you might hate me for doing this, Eric. But if you want to see what Gimpy was about, our wonderful friend Chuck. Oh wait, I'm not supposed to call him wonderful, am I?
Wonderfully terrible.
Okay. Chuck, if you're listening, thank you for uploading. And again, Eric might hate me for plugging this, but there's actually a live performance. I am going to warn you that the audio is not the greatest. Live performance from this place, I think it was Peabody's in Moline, of Gimpy on YouTube. That exists now. And if you want to,
I haven't actually watched it yet. So
you haven't watched it yet?
I don't know. No. I get really strange about that stuff. You know, it's hard. But since I haven't seen it,
is it okay for me to plug it, or should I?
Yeah,
no.
No. I assume it's awesome,
dude.
Until I watch it, I can't know. So it's like,
dude, most of the songs were not on the album that you played.
Nice.
Like, and so
Secrets.
When you say if you would have been a more experienced dude, those songs would have been, if you would have made a second record with those songs and better production.
Yeah.
Dude, I think it would have been just as good as the Pulsars.
Well, thanks. Yeah.
I mean, or at least it would have, you know what I mean? It would have, because I mean, Gimpy with Sparkles is a great album. It's just, you know, like you said, it suffers from the production, which it sounds like the guy who recorded it was kind of, he just wasn't into what you guys were doing, basically.
I don't think he'd recorded stuff like that. So and that's the way it is. I mean, honestly, at the time, even sound guys didn't know what to do with us.
Well, in '99, now it's a different thing. Right. You hear drum machines all the time and stuff, you know. But yeah, in '99, there was still that attitude that drum machines are inferior because everything had to be real and organic in the '90s.
Yeah, the only real instrument we had was a guitar. So it's like,
Right.
Someone coming from like an old school, like 70s classic rock. Well, I guess it wasn't classic rock in the 70s, but 70s rock and roll kind of background.
Yeah.
It wasn't the greatest match, but I mean, we did what we did, and I am grateful for the opportunity and the experience. And I'm not just bullshitting. Like, that record would not have gotten made if it were up to us to be able to do it. So
Sure.
I'm glad that,
The
people
songs
helped to make it. So
the songs overshadow the production anyway.
Yeah.
In my eyes. I mean, I don't even think about the production on it when I'm listening to it, you know.
Mm-hmm.
But
Yeah.
I will say though, you mentioned that robot world.
Yeah.
You know what it sounds like to me?
What's that?
Sounds like the Flintstones theme park in Arizona. Did you know there's a Flintstones theme park in Arizona?
No.
And it's, I guess, like really like some I think it was Rolling Stone did an article on it or something. And they called it like the most depressing place on earth because nobody ever went to it.
Maybe I have seen pictures of that. Is it
Just-
closed down now?
I think so.
Yeah,
But
I
you
have
were
seen
able-
those pictures.
They had food stands where you could get like bowls of like Cocoa Pebbles and Fruity Pebbles. Like you could actually buy like bowls.
Oh man, great.
Just the weirdest things, like Flintstones theme park.
Yeah.
So if you guys want to know more about, you know, what Erik is talking about with his old man Gimpy, definitely check out that YouTube video. It's good stuff. I was a big fan, still am, and I'm also a fan of Erik's new solo record, his tape. Sorry, I'm plugging a lot of stuff.
Oh, that's
Erik.
cool.
And it is fantastic. Some people, I guess, have said that it sounds kind of like Galaxy 500. I don't think that that's too far off the map, honestly.
Yeah, I still need to listen to them. So
maybe I'll pick a record from them.
there you
next
go.
week.
Just start using this show to force me to listen to
Force
things.
you to listen to stuff.
That's a great idea.
I'll remember. Well, apparently I did that with Pulsars.
Yeah. Well, no, it was great. I was glad that you picked it. Yeah.
But Eric Whitacre's solo album is called "I'll Remember You This Way," and it's fantastic. You guys should check it out.
Thanks.
And then a couple of other things to plug here. This also has to do with Erik.
Oh boy.
It is that we forgot to mention that Erik was on another podcast. When was this? Like a couple weeks ago, Erik?
Yeah. Yep. I was cheating.
Yes, he was.
I was
cheating on his
running around
podcast.
on Dan. Yeah.
When I was sick, nonetheless.
Yeah.
But
Man's
It's,
got needs.
exactly. I Hear, I See Radio, episode
Yeah.
116. I haven't listened to it yet, but it's on my playlist. It was basically an interview with you, wasn't it, Erik?
Yeah. Justin Comer of Iowa City runs this thing called I Hear, I See. The IC is just the letters like Iowa City. I don't think he started it, but he's been running it for a while. And what it was kind of like shows where he would kind of pair up, different kinds of people in the scene, whether they be at the university and school for music, or if they're from the DIY scene or whatever, and kind of trying to bring them together. And so I performed an I Hear, I See a few years back, solo, and then I did one with a group we called The Demon Possessed, which was Sean Jones and Phil Mall and myself. And so because of that, when my tape came out, Justin asked me to be on the podcast. So that's why I was on there. So,
That's awesome, man.
Yeah.
I remember The Demon Possessed when you guys were called Miracles of Light.
Yeah.
Was that-
It was, what was our name at that
Or
point?
was it Miracles of Light?
Mechanics of Light.
Mechanics of Light. That's
Yep.
Miracles.
Right.
Miracles of Light sounds cool too.
Yeah.
But Mechanics of Light. That's it. Yeah. And then you guys changed your name to the Demon Possessed.
Yeah, on a drunken whim on my part at a show.
Really?
Yeah, at a show. So then we got on stage and I think Phil or Sean said, well, I guess we're called the Demon Possessed now. And then we played. Because I was just like, we should be called the Demon Possessed because this is the best band name ever. And they were like, okay, whatever, you know. So,
That's hilarious. I remember
Yeah.
my old band played with you guys when it was Mechanics of Light, Abnormal Man.
Yeah.
And and then the other Anomander.
yeah.
So it was like
Anomander.
Anomander, which is pretty similar to what you guys were doing. Kind of,
Yeah.
I don't want to say noise because it wasn't just noise.
no, they were a little more like Trans Am, maybe.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Like sort of stuff. And then Abnormal Man, which we were basically just psychotic rock and roll at
Yeah.
times. And with we told ourselves that we were going to play Ramones style and not stop between the songs.
Yeah.
And then Jeff was just like, oh God, this, like he would say things like, oh God, the set never ends.
Yeah.
It's like, yeah, you're the one. Well, I think we all kind of like, he wanted, like, I remember saying like, maybe we should not do that because some of our songs are like 5 minutes long. Like with the Ramones, it makes more sense. You know what I mean?
They got
But like
get
some of our songs are 5 minutes long, and Jeff is a really good fucking drummer, energetic drummer too. And like, so I was like, dude, like, are you sure you're okay after playing this 6-minute song?
just to start the next one.
Yeah, just to start the next one. Oh, I'll be okay. And then like he would, after like 5 songs, oh God, it's the set that never ends. Like he actually said that one time.
Oh man. Yeah.
And that was an interesting show. It was cool though.
Was that at the Trumpet Blossom?
Yes, it was at the Trumpet Blossom.
So I think that was the show where I changed the band name.
yeah, probably was.
Yeah.
I think so.
Oh,
But
wow.
I guess I don't remember, but I mean that probably was it. If you say it was it, it was it. Eric.
I mean, maybe. I don't really remember either.
But JL and all the guys from Zool, they were in Anomander.
Right.
And now Zool, I don't know if you heard their recent album, Zool has basically went into a direction that was like Anomander.
Oh,
so
really? No, I
kind of
haven't
think,
heard the
yeah,
new one yet.
I kind of
that's
think
cool.
that Anomander was sort of, well, because their drummer left, so now JL plays drums in Zool.
Oh, okay.
And
Well,
he does vocals.
maybe we should review that.
Dude,
next time.
oh wow, I didn't even think of that.
Yeah.
Yeah,
That
and you know
sounds
what?
good.
JL would actually be a good guy to have on the podcast. JL, if you happen to listen to this at all, you're welcome to come on the podcast.
You're being called
anytime.
out, bud.
But I didn't even think of that. Anyway, couple more things that I want to plug here. First of all, as always, you can contact us on our Instagrams. I'm Dan_the_ruler. Erik is Old Man Erie, all one word, lowercase.
Yep.
Erie
right.
spelled EERIE.
Yeah.
Also, I just want to say that this is kind of a milestone. I've been keeping track of the downloads, and I want to thank all of our listeners out there. We just reached over 500 downloads, which means that you guys are listening, and we appreciate that. That's amazing.
Yeah.
So thank you
Nice.
very much, guys, for all of the support. This is a podcast that I started with the intent of me interviewing people. And then after the good conversation, actually great conversation that I had with Erik on the second episode, I thought, you know, me and Erik, we always had great conversations. And so I just kind of had the idea to ask him to be like my co-host.
Yeah.
And now I consider Erik as part of Accelerativ Thrust. You know, like you're basically part of Accelerativ Thrust now, Eric.
Yeah,
as far
thanks.
as I'm concerned.
Thanks
Absolutely.
for having me. Yeah.
Oh, absolutely. This has
fun.
been. I actually think that having you around has improved the direction of the podcast immensely.
Well,
in my
thanks.
opinion, like, because I mean, I just when it's one person interviewing, that's kind of cool, but two people talking about their passions, whether it's music and whether it's comic books or robot world or Flintstones theme parks, food. We talk about food a lot. It's all good, man. I just want to say thank you, Eric, for being.
Oh
a
yeah,
part of
thanks.
this.
Thanks so much for having me on here. It's been really fun, and it's
Absolutely.
forced me to listen to a lot of music. No, it's pushed me into listening to a lot more music, and that's something that can only be a good thing. So,
And that's one of the things that I think is great is that we're getting each other into a lot of stuff.
yeah, I think so.
I mean, I never would have heard Fire Tools. I never would have heard, Charlie. How do you say his last name?
MEGIRA?
MEGIRA, that's it.
Something like that.
Never would have heard that. I never would have heard ESG.
Yeah, nice.
I never would have heard Nickelback. If I hadn't started doing this podcast.
Oh boy, yeah. I mean, it is hard for me not to pick a Nickelback album every week.
It'd be crazy if they just became like a noise band for one album.
Oh, I think it's noise.
Yeah, it is noise. That's true.
How
It's
many
noise.
albums do they have? Let's see. How many weeks in a row can I pick a Nickelback record?
That's what honestly, we should do an episode where we each decide to listen to their discography and review it.
Okay. It looks like they have like maybe 10 records.
What?
I don't
You're
know.
shitting me.
I'm just looking at the
They have that many records? Are you kidding?
Spotify. Yeah, it looks like it.
Yeah, but some of them might be like greatest hits or something.
So let's see. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. 9. They have 9 on
Wow.
Spotify.
I like how I was quiet and just let you keep counting.
Yeah, we have really wasted a lot of time on this episode.
Ladies and gentlemen.
2 hours
Yeah, it's
in
almost 2 hours, ladies and gentlemen.
and I'm just counting to 9 slowly.
Yeah.
That's how you get the listeners right there.
Exactly. That's how we're gonna.
Hey, tune
guys are
in,
gonna-
listen to me count slowly.
You guys are gonna stick around for this, aren't you? Okay, so with that all
shit.
being said, I think that it's time to
Yeah.
cash in.
Sounds good.
But yes, we will see you guys next week, and I hope you all have a wonderful week.
Bye.
Goodbye.